In the final desperate months of World War II, Allied soldiers on the front lines reported encountering something that defied explanation. A weapon so advanced, so terrifying in its capabilities, that after the war, every trace of its existence was systematically erased from official records. Soldiers described blinding flashes of light followed by complete silence. Enemy positions reduced to nothing but ash and twisted metal. And in the aftermath, strange radiation that made compasses spin wildly and radio equipment malfunction for days. Allied High Command initially dismissed these accounts as battle fatigue or propaganda. But behind closed doors, a classified task force was already racing to capture this technology before it could be deployed on a larger scale. Today we uncover the chilling story of the weapon they tried to erase from history, and why three governments still maintain its secrecy nearly 8 decades later. Before we dive into this disturbing chapter of forgotten military history, make sure to hit that subscribe button and comment below which country you're watching from. Your support helps us continue revealing these hidden historical truths. The earliest documented encounter with the mysterious weapon occurred in January 1945, as Allied forces pushed into German territory. A forward reconnaissance unit of the U.S. 5th Armored Division reported something unusual near the Rhine Valley. According to declassified portions of their after-action report, the unit observed a German convoy transporting what appeared to be specialized equipment under heavy guard. Before they could relay detailed intelligence, the area was suddenly engulfed in what the unit commander described as a light brighter than 1,000 flares, but concentrated in a perfect circle approximately 200 meters in diameter. When the light dissipated seconds later, a perfect hemisphere had been carved out of the landscape, as if someone had taken a giant ice cream scoop to the earth itself. The edge of this hemisphere was described as glassy, like sand fused into crude glass. More disturbing was what the hemisphere contained: absolutely nothing. The convoy, the specialized equipment, even the topsoil and vegetation, all completely vaporized. Staff Sergeant James Donovan, the only member of the reconnaissance team to survive past 1950, described the aftermath in a recorded interview conducted shortly before his death in 1997. "It wasn't like anything we'd seen before. Not like conventional bombs or artillery. There was no explosion, no sound at all. Just this light and then emptiness. Perfect emptiness. Like a piece of the world had been surgically removed." Within 48 hours of this incident, all members of the reconnaissance unit were separated and reassigned to different divisions. Their report was classified at the highest level, and each man was debriefed individually by counterintelligence officers who emphasized that discussing the incident would constitute treason. Despite these precautions, similar accounts began emerging from different sectors of the front as Allied forces continued their advance into Germany. While Allied soldiers were encountering this technology on the battlefield, intelligence officers were piecing together fragments of information about its origins. The breakthrough came in February 1945, when British commandos raided a research facility near Peenemünde on the Baltic coast, a site already known for the development of the V-2 rocket program. Hidden beneath the main facility, they discovered laboratories dedicated to what internal documents referred to as Project Sonnenwende, German for Solstice. The British team managed to capture several scientists and technical documents before being forced to withdraw under heavy counterattack. The captured materials revealed that Project Sonnenwende had begun in 1943 under the direct oversight of the SS rather than the conventional German military research divisions. Unlike other German wonderweapon programs that evolved from theoretical scientific research, Sonnenwende appeared to have started after the recovery of unusual materials from an unspecified location in Norway. These materials, described in the captured documents as non-terrestrial in origin, displayed properties that defied contemporary scientific understanding. Most notably, they interacted with electromagnetic fields in ways that allowed for the focusing and amplification of energy to unprecedented levels. Dr. Klaus Werner, the project's lead physicist, described the core component as a crystalline structure that appears to bridge dimensions, allowing energy to be drawn from what can only be described as an external reservoir not bound by our physical laws. The Nazi leadership, desperate for a technological advantage as conventional warfare turned against them, had poured resources into developing this material into a deployable weapon. By late 1944, they had succeeded in creating what the documents referred to as a Dimensionsoffener, a dimensional opener. According to recovered technical specifications, the Sonnenwende device was not a conventional weapon in any sense. Rather than generating destructive force through chemical explosives or nuclear reactions, it temporarily created what Werner termed a localized breakdown in the barrier between dimensional states. In simplified terms, the weapon opened a brief, controlled connection to another dimension with different physical laws. This connection allowed energy to flow from that dimension into ours, manifesting as an intense light followed by a complete breakdown of matter within the affected area. Unlike nuclear weapons, which release radiation and heat through atomic reactions, the Sonnenwende device left no radioactive fallout. However, it created other environmental anomalies that persisted long after deployment. The most common was a disturbance in electromagnetic fields that disrupted compasses, radio equipment, and later, electronic devices brought into affected areas. More disturbing were reports of temporal anomalies. Soldiers who survived close proximity to deployment zones reported experiences of time slippage, watches running backward, or the sensation of seconds stretching into minutes while the world around them moved at normal speed. The technical challenges that had prevented earlier deployment were substantial. The original prototype required enormous power, with generators consuming tons of coal to produce enough electricity for a single firing. The device itself was the size of a small house and required hours of calibration before use. By early 1945, however, German engineers had succeeded in creating a more mobile version. Mounted on a modified Tiger tank chassis, this version could be transported to the front lines and deployed with approximately 30 minutes of preparation time. Allied intelligence estimated that 5 such mobile units had been constructed. As the European theater of war approached its conclusion, both American and Soviet forces prioritized the capture of Sonnenwende technology and personnel. This objective became a central focus of Operation Paperclip, the secret American program to recruit German scientists for U.S. military advantage, particularly against the emerging Soviet threat. Documents released under Freedom of Information Act requests in the early 2000s reveal that the highest priority was assigned to capturing Dr. Werner and his core team of 7 scientists. These individuals were so valuable that special operations teams were diverted from conventional military objectives specifically to locate them. On April 17, 1945, an American Special Forces unit succeeded in capturing Werner and 3 other Sonnenwende scientists near Berchtesgaden. The remaining team members were captured by Soviet forces near Dresden 3 days later. The fragmented capture of the research team created a tense situation, with both superpowers obtaining partial knowledge of a technology too dangerous to use but too valuable to abandon. Werner himself, during closed-door testimony to military officials in 1946, warned that neither side possessed complete understanding of the principles involved. "This is not technology that should have been developed at this stage of human evolution," Werner reportedly stated. "We opened a door without fully comprehending what lies beyond it. There are aspects of the dimensional interface that remain unpredictable, effects we observed but could not explain." By late 1945, as the full strategic implications of Sonnenwende technology became apparent, a coordinated effort began to eliminate all public traces of its existence. This effort eventually involved intelligence agencies from the United States, Soviet Union, and United Kingdom, adversaries in the emerging Cold War who nonetheless shared an interest in keeping this particular technology contained. The official explanation provided to military personnel who had encountered Sonnenwende effects was that they had witnessed testing of conventional advanced explosives. Records mentioning the unique characteristics of the weapon were altered or destroyed. Soldiers who persisted in describing their actual experiences found themselves assigned to remote posts or facing psychiatric evaluation. Physical evidence proved more challenging to eliminate. The perfect hemispherical depressions left by Sonnenwende deployments could not be easily disguised or explained. The solution was ingenious in its simplicity. These sites were designated as restricted military areas, ostensibly for the disposal of conventional unexploded ordnance. Several remain restricted zones today, their true significance hidden behind warning signs and fences. The captured Sonnenwende prototypes faced different fates. 2 had been destroyed by their German operators rather than risk capture. 1 was obtained by American forces and transported to the Nevada test site, where it was studied in a purpose-built underground facility. The Soviet Union secured another unit, reportedly relocating it to a research complex in Siberia. The 5th and final prototype was never officially accounted for. While official records remain classified, testimonies from former personnel indicate that American efforts to reverse engineer Sonnenwende technology continued throughout the 1950s under the codename Project Looking Glass. Progress was slow, hampered by both the alien nature of the core technology and Werner's increasingly vocal concerns about the dangers of pursuing it. In August 1957, something went catastrophically wrong at the Nevada facility. Satellite imagery from the period, declassified decades later, shows a perfectly circular area approximately 800 meters in diameter where the surface geology appears altered, similar to but larger than the deployment sites documented in Germany. No official explanation for this anomaly has ever been provided. However, the testimony of Robert Franklin, a former security officer at the facility, offers disturbing insights. In a deathbed confession recorded by his son in 1994, Franklin described witnessing the test activation that went wrong. They had modified the original German device, thinking they understood it, Franklin recounted. When they activated it, the light was different, not white but a deep purple that seemed to hurt your eyes even if you weren't looking directly at it. Then the screaming started. People clutching their heads, blood coming from their ears and eyes. I was outside the primary containment area, but even there, something felt wrong, like reality itself was coming apart at the seams. According to Franklin, the activation created effects far beyond the intended test parameters. Rather than a controlled dimensional opening, they had created something that expanded rapidly, consuming the main laboratory and everyone inside it. The effect only stopped when emergency protocols severed power to the entire facility. Afterward, nobody would talk about what happened to the people caught inside the effect, Franklin continued. They weren't dead in any normal sense. There were no bodies. It was more like they stopped existing, erased from reality itself. But sometimes, in the weeks that followed, you could hear voices in that chamber, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Equipment would activate without power. And once, just once, I saw a hand reaching through what looked like a tear in the air itself. Following this incident, Project Looking Glass was officially terminated. The facility was decommissioned, filled with concrete, and buried beneath additional layers of earth and rock. Dr. Werner, who had warned against modifications to the original design, disappeared from all public and most classified records after 1957. While American efforts ended after the Nevada incident, evidence suggests that Soviet research continued longer under the codename Project Zerkalo, Mirror. KGB archives partially opened after the collapse of the Soviet Union reveal that their captured San and Wendy prototype was transported to a specialized facility near Semipalatinsk in Kazakhstan. There, under the direction of physicist Andrei Sakharov, before his later emergence as a dissident, Soviet scientists took a more cautious approach than their American counterparts. Rather than attempting to weaponize the technology, the Soviet program focused on understanding the dimensional interface itself. They constructed a series of increasingly sophisticated sensing apparatus around the core technology, activated at very low power levels to study the unique energy signature without risking a full dimensional breach. This research reportedly continued until 1963, when an unexplained incident led to the evacuation and abandonment of the entire facility. The official explanation in Soviet records attributes the closure to contamination from unsecured radioactive materials, but radiation surveys conducted after the fall of the Soviet Union found no elevated levels in the area. Local Kazakh accounts tell a different story. Residents of nearby villages describe a night when the stars disappeared from a circle of sky above the facility. In the days that followed, people reported dreams of cities that could not exist, and voices speaking backwards. Electronic equipment throughout the region experienced power surges and failures for months afterward. The entire Semipalatinsk complex was subsequently buried under thousands of tons of concrete and soil, with its exact location redacted from most Soviet maps. Satellite imagery shows an unusual circular pattern of vegetation in the region, with plant life forming perfect concentric rings that change color with the seasons in ways inconsistent with the surrounding ecosystem. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the San and Wendy story concerns the fate of the fifth prototype, the one never officially accounted for in Allied or Soviet records. Fragmentary intelligence reports and witness testimonies suggest that this final unit was being transported from the German production facility when it was intercepted by an SS Special Operations team acting on direct orders from Heinrich Himmler. Instead of being delivered to the front lines, it was redirected to a destination in the Austrian Alps. The purpose of this diversion remains unclear. Some historians specializing in Nazi occult interests suggest a connection to Himmler's obsession with fringe science and mysticism, particularly his belief that certain technologies could access ancestral Aryan wisdom or powers. What is known is that in May 1945, Allied forces investigating suspected Nazi hideouts in the Austrian Alps discovered an unusual installation built into a mountainside near Salzburg. Unlike conventional bunkers or research facilities, This installation appeared designed around a central chamber with walls covered in intricate mathematical equations and diagrams of constellations. The chamber itself was empty except for a circular platform that showed signs of enormous heat. The stone beneath had vitrified into glass similar to that found at San and Wendy deployment sites. More unusual were the curious patterns etched into this glass, resembling intricate circuit boards or complex mandalas. Most telling was the journal recovered from a nearby office, apparently belonging to an SS officer tasked with overseeing the site. The final entry, dated May 2, 1945, reads, "The Reichsführer's vision is fulfilled. The gate has opened. They have shown us the way forward, beyond defeat, beyond time itself. Those who are worthy will follow. Those who remain will forget." Allied investigators reported that despite the remote location, no bodies were found in or around the facility. No evidence of evacuation was discovered. The entire complement of personnel, estimated at 24 soldiers and 8 scientists, had simply vanished. The installation was photographed, partially dismantled for analysis, and then destroyed with explosives. All materials recovered were classified and reportedly stored in a special facility outside Washington, D.C. until 1973, when a fire of unexplained origin destroyed the entire archive. Despite extensive efforts to contain all knowledge of San and Wendy technology, its effects continue to manifest at the original deployment and testing sites. These persistent anomalies have become the basis for local legends and attracted attention from paranormal researchers unaware of their true origins. The hemispherical depressions in Germany, now overgrown with vegetation but still distinctly visible on geographical surveys, exhibit unusual properties. Electronic devices often malfunction in their vicinity. GPS systems show significant positional drift. More curiously, plant life within these depressions exhibits accelerated growth patterns and occasional mutations not seen in the surrounding areas. Wildlife behaves differently near these sites as well. Birds avoid flying directly over them. Trail cameras set up by environmental researchers have captured images of deer and other animals freezing in place for hours when entering the depressions, as if experiencing time at a different rate than the world around them. The Nevada site remains under strict government control, officially designated as a hazardous waste disposal area. Satellite monitoring shows regular activity by specialized teams in protective equipment, suggesting ongoing management of whatever remains there. Most intriguing are the reports from the Austrian site, which was less successfully contained. The area was incorporated into a national forest in the 1950s, with no special restrictions placed on public access, suggesting Allied forces believed they had neutralized whatever technology had been present. Hikers and climbers in the region occasionally report disorienting experiences, compasses spinning wildly, watches running backward, and most commonly, a sensation described as temporal echo, briefly seeing or hearing events that occurred in the past or glimpsing what appear to be phantom structures that fade when approached. In 2012, a group of geology students mapping the area accidentally rediscovered the remains of the installation, despite the documented demolition in 1945. They reported finding an intact chamber deep within the mountain, reached through a fissure created by seismic activity. Their photographs, which briefly circulated online before being removed, showed a room with walls covered in mathematical equations matching those in the 1945 Allied documentation, equations that should have been destroyed decades earlier. Most disturbing was their report of finding a journal on a stone pedestal in the center of the chamber. The journal reportedly contained entries dated continuously from May 1945 to April 2012, as if someone had been living there, writing regular updates for 67 years. The final entry, dated the day before the students' arrival, read simply, "Visitors coming tomorrow. The first in this cycle. They won't understand yet, but soon the convergence will become apparent to everyone." Austrian authorities closed the area for environmental remediation shortly after the students reported their discovery. Satellite imagery shows extensive activity at the site for several months, followed by a return to apparent abandonment. All members of the student group were reportedly required to sign non-disclosure agreements. Modern physicists who have studied the fragmented information available about San and Wendy technology note disturbing parallels with current theoretical work in quantum mechanics and string theory. Dr. Eleanor Chin, a theoretical physicist at CERN who reviewed some of the declassified material in 2015, observed that the mathematical models described in the San and Wendy documents anticipate concepts we've only begun to formalize in the past decade. Their understanding of multidimensional interactions appears to have been advanced beyond what should have been possible given the physics knowledge of that era. Particularly notable is the San and Wendy concept of dimensional bridging, creating controlled connections between different layers of reality. This bears striking resemblance to modern theories about parallel universes existing alongside our own, separated only by the thinnest of barriers. What's most concerning, Chin noted in a paper subsequently withdrawn from publication, is that their approach seems to have bypassed the enormous energy requirements our current models predict would be necessary for such interactions. If their method worked as described, it suggests either a fundamental flaw in our understanding of quantum barrier mechanics, or the existence of previously undetected dimensional, thin points where the separation between realities is naturally weaker. The military implications of such technology, if it could be reliably controlled, remain as strategically significant today as they were in 1945. A weapon that could selectively remove matter from reality without collateral radiation or ecological damage represents the ultimate precision strike capability. This continuing strategic value likely explains the ongoing classification of San and Wendy research, despite the passage of nearly 8 decades. Unlike many other World War II weapons programs that have been fully declassified and documented, official acknowledgement of San and Wendy remains conspicuously absent from the historical record. The systematic erasure of San and Wendy from historical records represents one of the most successful information suppression operations of the modern era. The collaboration between former wartime allies, who were rapidly becoming Cold War enemies, underscores the perceived danger of allowing this technology to become public knowledge. Historic revisionism took many forms. Soldiers who had witnessed deployments found their reports altered in official records. Historians who stumbled upon references to the program in their research received visits from government officials who emphasized national security concerns. Academic papers mentioning anomalies consistent with San and Wendy effects were denied publication through indirect pressure on scientific journals. For decades, this suppression was nearly total. Only in the post-Cold War era, as document declassification accelerated and aging veterans became willing to share their experiences, did fragments of the story begin to emerge. The Internet age further complicated suppression efforts. Witnesses could connect with each other, comparing experiences and identifying patterns. Amateur historians could access digitized records from multiple countries, spotting inconsistencies and redactions that pointed to deliberate concealment. In response, a more sophisticated approach to information management emerged. Rather than denying the existence of anomalous weapons testing during World War II, authorities began acknowledging some aspects while redirecting attention toward conventional explanations. Declassified documents about other advanced Nazi technologies were released, creating the impression of transparency while still withholding the most sensitive San and Wendy material. Perhaps most effective was the deliberate association of San and Wendy references with clearly fictional conspiracy theories about Nazi occultism and flying saucers. By allowing the factual fragments to become contaminated with obvious falsehoods, legitimate research became easier to dismiss as paranormal fantasy. In 2019, a cache of documents was anonymously uploaded to various file-sharing platforms before being quickly removed. These documents, appearing to be internal NATO memoranda dated 2014, discussed the ongoing containment requirements for inheritance sites, the apparent code name for locations associated with San and Wendy technology. The memoranda referenced cyclic increases in anomalous activity at these sites that corresponded with specific astronomical alignments. More concerning was the discussion of dimensional thinning detected by specialized monitoring equipment, suggesting that whatever effect had been created by the original San and Wendy activations has been growing stronger rather than dissipating over time. Most alarming was a passage describing echo events, where equipment, material, and in one case possibly personnel from the original 1945 experiments temporarily manifested at monitoring stations before disappearing again. The document recommended increased security protocols and the development of reality anchors to prevent full continuity breach. While the authenticity of these documents cannot be verified, they align with observed increases in security activity at known San and Wendy sites over the past decade. Satellite imagery shows new construction and monitoring equipment being installed around these locations, despite their official designation as abandoned or repurposed areas. In 2023, unusual atmospheric phenomena were observed simultaneously at multiple known San and Wendy locations. Witnesses described localized aurora-like effects not consistent with normal atmospheric physics. These events, lasting approximately 17 minutes, were accompanied by widespread electronic disruptions in surrounding areas. Official explanations attributed these phenomena to solar flare activity, despite the localized nature of the effects and their precise correlation with San and Wendy sites. More telling was the immediate deployment of specialized units to each location following the events, units operating under the authority of a multinational task force rather than any single country's military structure. The wartime weapon erased from history represents more than just another classified military technology. San and Wendy stands as evidence that conventional understanding of physical reality was breached decades before mainstream science acknowledged such possibilities. The weapon's development during the desperate final phase of Nazi Germany's war effort demonstrates how extreme pressure can accelerate technological breakthroughs, sometimes beyond the point of ethical or philosophical readiness to handle the implications. More concerning is what the continuing classification and active management of San and Wendy sites suggests. That whatever dimensional breach was created in 1945 was not a temporary event but an ongoing phenomenon requiring constant monitoring and containment. The coordinated effort by former enemies to suppress all knowledge of this technology speaks to a shared recognition of its dangers. In a world where military advantage typically overrides all other considerations, the decision to contain rather than exploit San and Wendy indicates an unprecedented level of concern. Perhaps most unsettling is the possibility that those who vanished during the original experiments and tests may not be truly gone. The recurring reports of voices, partial manifestations, and temporal anomalies at San and Wendy sites suggest they may exist in some intermediate state, neither fully present in our reality nor completely absent from it. As we approach the 80th anniversary of the first San and Wendy deployments, the question remains whether the dimensional barriers weakened by those events will continue to hold, or whether what was begun in the desperate final days of humanity's most destructive conflict will yet have consequences beyond our comprehension. If you found this exploration of forbidden military history enlightening, please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to comment below which country you're watching from. Your support helps us continue bringing these erased historical truths to light. Until next time, remember, not everything absent from history books has truly been forgotten. Some secrets remain hidden not through oversight, but through deliberate and continuing effort.